So yeah, welcome to Storytelling to Grow Relationships and Donors. And really, this is all about focusing on individual one-on-one fundraising and cultivating the relationships that are necessary to have a successful individual fundraising program through the basics of storytelling. Um, and I want to start with a land acknowledgement. First, that I am in Wabancha, known as New Orleans now, the unceded lands of the Chapatulas, Choctaw, Kumas, and many other tribes that have been lost to both colonization as well as history, and that we are using Zoom, which is headquartered on the unceded lands of the Ramaytush and Wabancha peoples. Are y'all interested in sharing whose land you are currently calling in from?
Sure. I'm on Ohlone land.
Thanks, Frank.
A roaming land. I'm on a land formerly populated by a number of tribes, now known as California, Southern California.
Thank you. And so I think you all have met before at one of the previous trainings. Did you all overlap at one of the trainings, or did I know you at its different ones?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't think I've met.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna have y'all reintroduce yourselves anyway. So we would love it if you could share your name, pronouns, project or organization that you're kind of bringing to the fundraising tonight. What your fundraising experiences with individual fundraising, and then also what emotions come up when you think about individual fundraising.
Okay, I can start. My name is Maria Tuttle. My pronouns are she, her. My program is the Children's Art Studio Richmond, or Taller de Arte para Niños Richmond. And what experiences have I had? Well, I'm doing a lot of work to have that experience, as you know, Kyle. So I've been sort of getting prepared to have the fundraising experience, and my first soft launch / fundraiser is in 2 weeks. So I'm here for some extra pointers and some encouragement. And in terms of the emotions and feelings, fear, dread, nausea, all the things. I'm not a natural salesperson, and I'm also quite an introvert. So this is I feel like I'm sort of need to step into those bigger shoes because I really care about my project, and I'm very passionate about the arts for underserved communities. So I'm trying, and with Kyle's encouragement, I'm almost there.
Well, thanks for sharing, Maria. That was, I can totally relate. My name is Frank Koza, and I go by the pronouns he, him. I'm doing an audio documentary series called Brain Stories, which is a stories that tells that is telling stories of people with serious mental illness in their own voices, with really high quality, carefully crafted storytelling. I have very little experience with individual fundraising. I'm actually curious to kind of know, like, sort of separating things out between individual fundraising with small family foundations, which is part of what I'm seeking, and just individuals, because I am launching, or going to be launching, a crowdfunding campaign very shortly, and looking to build audience, reach people, and get those $5, $10, $20 donations as well. So interested in the whole range. I'm terrified, completely terrified. I share that completely. And it was a basket case yesterday until the end of the day, where I just, did some deep breathing. But I'm also actually kind of, a part of me is also kind of loving it. It's brand new territory for me, and there's parts of it. What I love about it is I get to talk about the thing I care about most. And I think that comes through because I get a lot of pretty good feedback when I do. It's still terrifying to me, and to like organize something and ask people for money. But I sort of I have both those things going on at the same time.
Thanks, y'all. And normally I would have started with introducing myself a little bit more, but I actually do quite a lot of work with both of you. And so I've met Frank during, I think, the first one of these series, and then Maria, you during the second one of these series. So even though it would be lovely to have more people here, it's actually very sweet to have both of you here. And so because of that, I also just want to say, like, I'm going to go through the material fairly quickly so we can get more towards activities. Thank you. And so that, and I'll just work with y'all alongside in these activities, and so I can kind of give you some more like real-time coaching and feedback as well. And then also because like some of this might be repetition because I've worked with y'all so much and we've been doing fundraising specific stuff. And so sorry about that, but also don't hesitate to stop me and ask me to like dig in a little bit deeper, and especially if you want me to get into specifics around either of your projects, since I'm fairly familiar with them. All right, awesome. So let me share my screen. So, like y'all were saying, one-on-one fundraising, which is, you know, completely interchangeable with individual fundraising, can be scary. And like this is true for all of us, or most of us. There are definitely salespeople who out there, like they just have pure adrenaline around it, no fear or anxiety. But I would say 90% of us, maybe 95% of us experience fear or anxiety when it comes to not asking for money or support. And so kind of where are those emotions coming from? You know, fear of the no, fear of rejection is a big part of that. That's something that society teaches us from the get-go. It's kind of almost genetically ingrained in us because we are social animals. And so there is always that fear of the no. The thing about the fear of the no is if you don't ask, of course, you've got to know by default anyways. And so fundraising and asking for support, you know, it's not like there's never going to be that harm of relationship. Nobody gets upset at you for asking you for a donation unless you do it in a really rude or upsetting kind of way, which is possible, but it's very rare to do that. Another really big point, right? Asking for money is an act of vulnerability, especially for a project that you love and care about so much. The more you care about it, the more vulnerable you are when you're asking for support. And as part of that, individual fundraising often involves asking friends and family for that support, which is even more vulnerable in a lot of ways. And also oftentimes, especially if it's family, has a lot of different layers of history and relationships that are involved with it as well. And while at a certain point, you will get your organization beyond individual fundraising with your immediate circle is going to be your initial source for that. And also the people who will help you get beyond that circle, who will introduce you to the other donors who will be able to support your project. And then another final thing around fundraising that makes it feel scary or kind of anxiety inducing is that we're taught that it is a one-sided exchange, that we are asking for something and not giving anything in return, which in capitalism in the American world is bad, very shameful, right? We should always be offering value for money. And so that's one of the myths of fundraising, is that, and that we're taught that it's a one-sided thing, that like you as a fundraiser are not offering anything in exchange for that donation. But we know that that's not true, right? We know that when you are fundraising, when you're asking for money, it's for exchange of impact in the world. And so while one-on-one fundraising can be scary, it can also be exciting, right? And so flipping the emotions on their head, fundraising can be exciting because you get to personally connect supporters to your project cause. It's really satisfying when somebody's like, oh my God, I love what you're doing. How can I support it? It's a great feeling. You're helping others have an authentic impact in the world. that can't be overstated, right? People want to actually have impact in the world. They want to, most people want to have a positive impact in the world in one shape or form. And so you, when you're doing your best fundraising, you're helping others feel that sense of impact and really be connected to a direct impact. Also, each donation is a relationship that can be grown over time. And I find that very rewarding. When you have an initial supporter, especially when you start to get those first supporters who are outside of your friends and family circle, and you kind of, get them to donate, the first 500, and the next year it's 2,000, and the next year it's 5,000, and the whole time you're getting to know this person, you're getting to know their family, their lives. Why is the project important to them? Why do they keep coming back and giving? And I think that that's a really fulfilling thing to have. It's not, again, this transactional kind of thing. You're really getting to know each other, providing support for each other in different ways. And then, of course, fundraising is really exciting, because what's more exciting than shooting way past your personal goals, one fundraising for your own project? It's a really fantastic feeling when you're like, oh, I only needed to fundraise 2,000 and I got 5,000 instead, or instead of 10,000, it's 20,000. So there's just that like very satisfying feeling of meeting your goal and surpassing it, and knowing that you're actually, getting the resources you need for that project that you love. Anyways, you all know that. I'm gonna keep moving through this. So I was gonna do a parent share of one experience of individual fundraising where it worked for you or didn't. Obviously, there are only 2 of you here, so we will not bother to split up into groups at this point. And so I would just love to open this up. The idea is to share a time where either you could be the one doing the ask, or you were being asked for a donation, and either it really worked for you, it really resonated and you did give, or you got that donation, or like wah, it was a flop. Would anybody like to share?
Since I haven't gotten into the fundraising yet, I can just, on the other end, I know when it doesn't work when someone's asking me for a donation. I know like it doesn't work, for example, to be sort of like the people who are at the grocery store entrances, for example. That's like I feel so terrible for them, but at the same time, like I'm in a hurry, I don't have time to listen to a pitch, so on and so forth. So like as someone who would be giving, even though I might be interested in that cause and care about it, I just kind of blow right by them. And so like I'm scared that karma is going to come right back to me, and that's going to happen to me. So I'm like trying to do my own fundraising approach in a different way. So that's kind of what I've been focused on, and just really thinking through like how can I be personable, not sort of the soft sell type person, rather than like feeling cornered, which is what I often feel at the grocery store. And so that's what I know that you know, Kyle, and I'm going to do this fall festival, and I'm going to that's going to be my sort of entry into the fundraising individual donors. So I'm hoping that that's going to be great. And then we talked through like having it as a fun thing with kids activities and ways just to have a conversation. So that's sort of my goal, is just to have a conversation and not try to sell anyone right away or seal the deal, as they say. It's just, that's kind of what I'm getting ready for. So I'll pause. There's probably a lot more information than you needed.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, and what I'm hearing is both like that when you feel pressured to give, or it's like in an environment where you didn't know you would be cornered into giving, that creates a scenario where like, no, I don't want to engage with this. Yeah, and that also that you're looking at your own path to like, how do you kind of gently invite people in a public environment which has some similarities to that. That's great, thank you. Frank, do you want to share?
Yeah, Maria, that was really helpful to hear. Thanks for that. And I like that perspective of, even that example of like, oh yeah, right, that happens all the time. There's a lot I feel like I can learn from being asked to give or asking to give. Um, I was just thinking that I know my mind is sort of flying around. Like there's a lot of different ways I might answer your question, Kyle, because it's certainly a great one. But the main thing that sprung to my mind was that I get really excited when I talk about my project. I don't have any problem doing that, and I literally turn on and people will say like, "Oh my God, Frank, it's like you just woke up. What happened?" What's hard for me though is so I can engage with people really well about the project. What's really hard for me is that turn to say, hey, now would you be willing to join me in, in this mission to change the narrative around serious mental illness? And do I do the whatever it's called, the close or the ask for money, and in saying like a specific number, so much so that when I was talking about it with a friend, and just saying like, this is what I would say, she said, oh, I noticed that your voice really dropped when you asked for money. So I'm just saying that out loud because it seems like that's an area where I could certainly improve. I'd learn a lot.
So going back to kind of the question then around any of your own experiences, have you ever had an experience where somebody has successfully done that pivot, been talking to you about a project that they loved, and then made a pivot and asked you for support in a way that you felt good about it?
So yes, certainly, and I was trying to think of a specific example because that would be best, and I couldn't think of it. But I mean, when I'm speaking with somebody who does that, my jaw just drops. I go like, "Whoa, I want to take some notes because they're doing this so well, and I know they're doing it. It's perfectly clear what they're doing, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't grate on me like somebody who comes up and says, "Hey, could you give? You really need this," and blah blah blah. Blah. The kind of approaches that are sort of all about the person asking. So I know that wasn't a very good answer to what you asked. It wasn't very helpful.
No, that was a great answer. This is not a space where there's bad answers. I mean, I doubt it. I doubt that. Yeah. Maria, have you ever had a time where somebody has like engaged you around a project and successfully made that shift in a way that you were like, oh wow, that was kind of like smooth or savvy of them?
I have to say I'm a nerd because I listen to NPR, I listen to KQED, I listen to KPFA, I listen to like basically all the, and then like KQED like all the, let's see, I'm thinking of KCRW, and they always do these fall fundraisers, and I'm like, oh, I love that station. And they're asking these hosts that I love and I feel like I have a relationship with, even though I don't know them. And they're asking, it's time, we have a matching donor, and if you call right now, you get X, Y, and Z. And even though I love them, and they're doing such a great job providing music that I really love or a service that I really love, I still don't donate. And I feel like this is the year that I'm gonna, give to the symphony or give to like all these arts organizations that I really love. And so that's why I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Fundraising individual donors are so hard. And they always do those fall fundraising drives. I'm sure you're like, have that in your memory. And they, like I'm saying, they're doing it really well, but it's just like I'm unable to do it because I feel like the process to donate is like mystifying to me. Like, even though they give me a number, I'm like, oh, really? Do I have to call that number? So I'm noticing that like you have to make it really easy for people to donate too. And so that's kind of one of the things that I'm taking away from like all of those fund drives that I've listened to over the years.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think ease like of access to donations, especially when you're doing kind of a broad call to action for a fundraising campaign, is so important. Absolutely. I think that's a great segue because it makes me think about my local radio station, which is WWOZ, which is like worldwide famous for jazz and New Orleans music. And they like, I've never been somebody who donated to listener pledges. I've supported NPR my whole life. I worked at Florida Public Radio. love it, but like I also had always been kind of turned off by those pledges. I've always like supported individual campaigns, but never been a part of the pledge drive. But here in New Orleans, they do a really fantastic job of storytelling, of having local musicians or local music lovers come on and talk about the decades of impacts that the station has had on them, their own personal story at Jazz Fest or at a certain concert. And it always feels so grounded, right, in an actual individual experience rather than kind of this lofty ideal of, oh, we're fundraising for local journalism and these lofty ideas of democracy and openness, which I again am 1,000 times behind. But sometimes I think having, or I know that having those personal stories that again ground it back into something that we can connect with on our emotions and our heart is always so important. So let me just keep going through. Let's see where. Okay, great. Let me get through a little bit more content and then we'll move on to the next activity. Oh wait, are things going on in the chat? Sorry. Okay, great. I did not miss anything. And actually, I want to share one article with y'all first. I found this was a really good one in terms of talking about what donors get out of donations and how it's not just a one-way exchange. This is a really great article about kind of the psychological impacts of what makes giving to others, why it makes us happy, why it brings us joy. And while it's in a philanthropy today, I think it's in like a normally, I think you get one free article, so you should be able to read that. Put that up. So let me share my screen again. Right, so the secret, so a lot of this is geared more towards individual fundraising in terms of relationship building. I know that you both are looking at doing kind of more public campaigns. And so what I would encourage you to think about this is like, a lot of this is going to be about how do you take those initial relationships you might have and grow them, as well as how do you cultivate those relationships that you're going to get out of a crowdfunding campaign or out of your initial supporters at your fundraising events, right? And so once you have those donors, you really want to focus on cultivating them and growing them. And again, the secret sauce there is relationship. People want to feel a relationship to you as well as the project, mostly to the project, but they also have a relationship to you. Both of you are both leaders and fundraisers. But even if you were a fundraiser, even if you're not the ED and you're just the primary fundraiser, it's so important that you have those strong relationships. And that's what's going to allow you to really continue to grow those donors year after year. And so I think of this as like, I'm a gardener. I'm a little bit of a gardener geek. And so I was thinking about like, okay, for gardening, you have NPK, which are like the 3 primary fertilizer ingredients, nutrients that foster growth in all plants. And so for me, when it comes to donors and kind of growing those relationships over time, I think impact, integrity, and engagement are those 3 key nutrients that you need to keep feeding into your donors, and that with the time and those nutrients are going to keep growing year after year. Of course, always everybody's economic level changes, and so it's not to say that you're going to consistently always see every donor give you more money year after year, but if people are able to, if you keep making sure that you are communicating impact, right? That you're telling your donor how their money is changing people's lives, culture, the world, that you are cultivating that integrity, you're demonstrating that integrity, right? And that's going to grow trust with the organization and its leadership in you. And if you were just a fundraiser, you as well. But again, y'all are in both of those roles. And engagement is kind of the third one. Like, you always have to regularly engage your donors. You can't just have it be passive. You want to be, engagement can be, again, it's asking them, it's thanking them, it's inviting them to events, it's asking for their feedback on programs, it's having just random one-on-one dinner chats with them if they're a big donor. You know, it's asking about their kids' lives. It's all of those things that make a real human relationship, and that also helps somebody feel like they're actively a part of the project and the organization. And like, as a donor gets more involved, that engagement piece keeps growing, right? Like, if somebody is giving you just $100 a year, you don't really need to be going to them and asking for their feedback around things as much. You know, if they're $1,000 donor at y'all's level, like when you're just starting, maybe that is somebody you want to be going to for feedback, and to like to kind of keep growing within those communities. And if they're $1 million donor at that point, then you definitely want to be asking them for their feedback and making sure that they feel like they are regularly engaged with the organization. Any questions on that? Cool.
I was just, yeah, I did, the idea, I wrote this down, Kyle, because I did something that I continue to miss. It's tell your donor how their money will change people's lives. And I'm now thinking that I actually need to have printed material where I can give that to them. Because right now everything's online. I haven't done any one-on-one live fundraising events. And now I'm also thinking through what are the things that they can take away that's going to be like, even if they can't donate it in the moment, that maybe they can come back or you know, scan my QR code, or you know, maybe send me an email later saying, I really love what you said. So, you know, like maybe like thinking through like what is the collateral that you can just easily, I did the I'm doing stickers and I'm doing magnets per your recommendation, but those are just my logos. So maybe just thinking through what is the collateral.
Well, and we're going to actually get to that in just a second, but it's something that I know that you both have heard about from me before, which is the one pager. uh, so going into kind of storytelling and individual fundraising, and again, you know, this is kind of building off of all of our other talks around storytelling, right? Storytelling is one of the most powerful ways you can connect with people in this world. It's ancient, it's primal, it's very effective. And so it will help you connect with and remember your project and yourself. When you're aiming to do storytelling and fundraising, think about the foundations of any story, right? You have your characters, you have your conflicts, and you have your setting. And those are going to be the three main things that you're going to be talking about. You kind of are also in a place where you talk a little bit about resolution in a way, right? Because like your impact is the resolution of the conflict. But again, that's just kind of part of the conflict narrative overall, right? You're in active conflict still. And so that's why you're also kind of your project team collaborators are the protagonists, right? You are the good guys of the story that you're telling. And you're recruiting your donor to the side that's doing right and going to win. You know, as much as we might want to try, always tell if we were journalists, if we were fiction writers, we would want to tell nuanced stories with levels of gray and not everything being black and white. But that's not the kind of storytelling we're doing when we're doing fundraising and when we're doing project-based storytelling, right? Y'all are doing the good work, you're doing an important work, and you are recruiting your donor over to your side to help be a part of the cause. And another important part around the storytelling is it's great to talk about the big vision, right? It's fine to talk about the long vision and the hierarchy of things, but also always reground it into the presence, into the people that you're impacting. Don't ever get too far away from the true characters of your story. All right, so So tools for individual fundraising, storytelling, your pitch, you're right, your too long didn't read pitch. Think of this is your elevator pitch. It's the most condensed version of what you're doing, why it's important. You should be able to remember and speak it with ease. It's the core language that should be repeated all over the place. This is a little bit your mission. It's like it might be some of your mission statement. It's probably an amalgam of your mission statement, kind of condensed down, along with like the why is it important, right? But this is your kind of concentrated pitch that you want to be able to just be able to spit out, whether it's to a new potential donor that you meet at a cocktail party, or it's in a grant application, or it's at a corporate sponsorship event, or whatever it is, right? This is your kind of go-to pitch that you're going to just keep repeating. And it's fine that it's the same language. Nobody's going to mind that, right? Like you're going to get tired of it, but nobody else will. And that's, it's not easy to develop. We'll go into a little bit more of it. The one pager, I think, is also the other crucial piece of information. And even though we might think like, wow, a double-sided one pager in today's times feels antiquated, having like a postcard with a QR code is just not going to have the same effect, I don't think. Funders typically are antiquated. Donors are on the older side. They're not, there's not a whole lot of 18 to 35-year-old big donors. There are some, but it's not probably who you're going for in terms of your individual fundraising crowd. Most people are going to want a paper document that they can kind of take away and look at later. Right. And so it's something you can leave potential supporters. Marie, I know that we've talked about how like this one pager actually has a lot of different incarnations, right? It might be one that is a individual fundraiser, individual fundraising kind of donor thing. And then a very similar version could be a corporate sponsor one pager, right? And they're going to have very similar edits and elements in them. You're just going to change a little bit to frame it one way or the other. But for this case, what we're talking about is really the one pager for individual fundraising. And I think that's honestly the best place to start, because then you're talking about your project from a more personal perspective rather from kind of the corporate advantage perspective. And that personal perspective is always a lot closer to your true impact. Use visuals, headings, bullet points to make it easy to read, and include calls to actions and URLs in it. So it's always easy for people to find more information. And, again, if this is a individual fundraising one pager, make sure you have a couple calls to action that are like, we want you to donate, we want you to support in this way. And then your website, again, we've talked about this, always necessary. It's basically your business card these days. And make sure you have a functional donation page for that ease of donation that you were mentioning earlier, right? That we always want to make it easy to go here and donate immediately. All right, so we're going to talk about honing pitches really quickly. So pitches. Oh, yes, Frank. You're muted.
Sorry. I've been typing away, so I try not to have the keystroke sound all the time. And the tools for fundraising, where does a deck fit in? I mean, a deck that could be sent, a link sent to an individual donor, for example. Is that like one-page supplement? Is that instead of a one pager? How do you see that?
Yeah, I view a fundraising deck as like maybe the next thing that you would develop after the one pager. Well, I think that they're great to develop. I don't think that they're as necessary for that initial kind of developing your initial circle of core funders. I think that it's going to be more for kind of the family foundations, for corporate sponsorships, for those kind of entities. And so I do think that they're really useful. But I think they should always start with your pitch, start with your pitch, then into your one pager. And then you can take that one pager and you can slice it into just a bunch of slides with some visuals, and that's your deck, right?
Great. Yeah, thanks. Makes sense.
So your pitch, 1 to 3 sentences, no run-on sentences, no and, then this and that and that and this and this. Yeah, anyways, you all know. You've read those pitches, you've read those mission statements. Try to avoid that. For your own sake, because it'll get really, you won't like repeating it. Stay away from listing all of the what's of your project and all the activities, right? Focus on talking about its impact, what is changing in people's lives, the culture, etc. Center on why the project is needed, what makes it unique, why is it needed now, how will it make a bigger splash than other similar projects, why is it a good investment, right? And don't be afraid to have drafts of it and have it evolve over time. It's going to naturally evolve. Your language around your project will evolve. This is why it's really great to always do regular check-ins around your mission language, around all of this core language, right? Is you're going to figure out more and more how what you're doing can best serve the intents of your project as you get further into it. And so it's fine for all of your pitch to evolve in the same way. Nobody else is going to be tracking that at all. And I find that your friends and collaborators are great people to just test things out with. All right, so we have, I think we have enough time for both of the activities that are coming up. So I was thinking that we would do a quick, draft your pitch. I think that both of you almost have pitches ready. Is that correct? I've worked with you both, y'all have some good pitch language together, correct?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it always takes me a while to open up, but yep.
How about we take 5 minutes?
I think you said
us.
it should be no longer than a 3-minute pitch. Isn't there was a time, what were sort of the guidelines for a good pitch?
1 to 3 sentences. Think about it, 30
Okay.
seconds. 30 seconds, probably.
Gotcha. Okay.
So this is not, so we're gonna do, this is just your pitch.
Yep.
Kind of like your elevator pitch. This does not need to include the ask in it. This is just the what is your project? Why is it important, right? Why should we care? And then we're going to do this, and we're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of asking for the donations, and then we'll do some role playing around that. So yeah, I'll feel like if I put on the 5 minutes on, and then y'all look at your language that you have, try to put that into a quick little elevator pitch.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Excellent. Just get that going for y'all. And feel free to go dark if that's your preferred means of working on this. Let's get you off, and then 5 minutes we'll come back.
for the future, the little bitty boys and girls. We got to make this land a better land than the world in which we live. We gotta help each man be a better man with the kindness that we give. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Yes we can. I know we can. Yes we can. Why can't we if we want it? Yes we can. I know we can make it work. I know that we can make it if we try. Yes we can. I know we can. Yes we can. Gosh almighty. Yes we can. I know we can. I know we can make it. I know we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Yes we can. I know we can. Yes we can. Why can't we if we want it? Yes we can. I know we can make it work. I know we can make it if we try. Yes we can. Yes we can. Great gosh almighty. Yes we can. I know we can. We can make it, y'all. Oh yeah, we can make it, y'all. Oh, only try. Yeah, we can make it, y'all. Sometimes it's hard. Times it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. Oh, if we want it, yes we can. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Yes we can. Yes we can. Why can't we if we want to get together? We can work it out. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. We can work it out. Yes we can. Yes we can. Why can't we if we want to get together? We can work it out. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Work it out. Hard to raise a chin like you ought to do. That's what it's all about. Don't you know we can work it out? I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Now is the time when people come together as an equal. Take the burden off your brother. Got to love one another. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. There's so many needy, so many poor, but love and understanding is the key to the door. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well. How can you sit there like there's nothing to do, just like you don't care what the world's coming to, Lord? I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. It's gonna be hard to let the people say no matter how hard, but there's a will, there's a way. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we gotta work it out. Every boy and girl gotta live as one till all the work is done. Yeah. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we can work it out. Work it out. But like to say, oh, there's a will, there's got to be a way. Oh, I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well we gotta try it out. Hard to raise our children like we ought to. That's what it's all about. Don't you know we can work it out? I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well. Now the time that the people come together and the people that can love one another, take the burden off your brother. I know we can make it. I know that we can. I know darn well.
How are you all feeling? Do you feel like you want a little bit longer to work on this, or do you feel like you are ready to try sharing them?
I realized, Kyle, that I had written down a pitch because I was so anxious about calling people online. So I was like, I'm just gonna write one really fast. And so I found it. So it would be great to workshop it.
Great. Frank, how about yourself?
I'm gonna have Maria just look through my documents and see if she can find a picture that I wrote, so I'll be all set there then. No, I just sort of, I went back and looked at something and have something that's okay. It's good for it'll be really easy to improve.
That's great. That's exactly where it should be. So I can split you all off by yourself, or I can just watch you all kind of workshop this with each other, and then kind of give my own feedback as well, whatever feels most comfortable for y'all.
I'm happy to start. I'm always like, since I was a teacher for a long time, I'm so grateful when someone just starts. So I'll just put myself in there, throw myself in. I'll just I hope this sounds a little bit more conversational. So that's what I've been working on. Like, it just needs to sound like a story, but it also needs to be 3 sentences. So I'm struggling with keeping it condensed. I always introduce myself. Hi, my name is Maria Tuttle, and I'm the founder and director of the Children's Art Studio, Richmond, Taller de Arte para Niños Richmond, and it's a bilingual program. We're a nonprofit organization that provides free art classes to low-income and historically underserved children in Richmond, CA. And we believe that all children should have access to quality arts education, regardless of their backgrounds or resources. And then I actually do have an ask there of, we're currently seeking funding for 2 upcoming 6-week sessions. And then I have a sort of, this is how much we need, and then your donation would make a real difference in the lives of our children and families. We could we could provide free art classes for children who would otherwise not be able to afford them. So that's where sort of the end of my pitch starts. So I need to make it more conversational. It sounds a little bit, I did intentionally make it talking points because I wanted to practice. The end.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Maria. Frank, if you want to give your thoughts, and then I have a couple I'd love to share as well.
Sure. I mean, I'm getting out my checkbook, Maria. I'm like, that was good, I thought. You know, it was plain simple, and it's really straightforward. I mean, I think introducing, you know, who you are and what you're doing, and why it matters, why it's important, and who you're reaching. Just instantly clear. And I mean, I literally was like, oh yeah, I get it. I get that. I support it. Done.
I was looking for a heart emoji. Do we have those available?
They're in there somewhere. Yeah.
There it is. Okay. Thank you, Frank. That really means a lot because Kyle knows that I always add too many words. And so he's been killing my word babies over the last month or so, which I really appreciated. Sort of just be more succinct. And the part that if I have more time, I would tell about why I personally matters to me, I think might be the next conversation. Like, that I was a kid who needed that program. I came to this country, did not know English. English is my second language, and I was able to go to a preschool art class, and I had a very kind teacher who allowed me to be, you know, stay inside and paint. And so that was my first sort of way for me to adjust to being new to this country. So that's why it's so important to me to be able to do that for very young kids and families who don't have the resources to have the experience that I had. So that would be my way to tell the story, since I don't have the programming yet or the real stories of the kids that I want to serve.
Well, I'm sure Carla said this, but that's a huge thing, your personal story, and that's resonates immediately and profoundly. So I don't know if it's got a place in a 30-second pitch, but it certainly has a place very shortly after that, I would think. I'll leave that to Kyle to say exactly when and how that ought to be a part, but it certainly, there's no doubt, should absolutely be a part of something you would say very early on to anybody you're appealing to individually. Because it's really powerful, just really powerful, Maria, plain and simple.
It's true. Like, that gave me a little chills, and that would be what I would say. Like, you've done a wonderful job of like a great like your initial pitch was great in telling us the what, and I wanted a little bit more of the why, and I think that you can almost skip some. Like, I think there is a way to actually hone the pitch that it tells your story at the same time as you talk about the organization and what you're trying to accomplish. And so it's always hard for me to write on the go. But I can imagine this being like, hey, again, I'm Maria Tuttle, doing this organization. We're a nonprofit arts education focused on making sure that no child is left out of the opportunity that arts education gives them within Richmond, which just doesn't have these opportunities available. There's no other programs that are allowing kids of any income level to engage in this. And, for me, that was so important during my childhood and blah, 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 right? And so that's 3 longer sentences, but again, if you wrote it out, you started to wordsmith a little bit, you could get it shorter and shorter and shorter.
No, that was so helpful. Thank you. Because I was trying to marry both of those and I couldn't figure out how. So thank you. That was huge help to me.
Great, Frank, now it's your turn.
Okay. I'm not including the asks as you said, and it's kind of, anyway, I'm gonna leap in. I'm just gonna read it because I wrote it. So rather than stumble through it, I'm gonna just read what I have. Mental illness is one of the last great territories of untold stories because it's hard, scary, and poorly understood. Brain Stories, my audio documentary series, tells trailblazing stories of people who live with mental illness and those who support them in their own voices. No one else is doing this with these stories. And this is how we change the negative narrative around mental illness and put it on the table as something we can say, support, and ultimately empathize with.
Yeah, Maria, I'd love to open up to hear your thoughts and feedback first.
No, I really love the way you started off the pitch, Frank, with and particularly it's misunderstood. It's not well understood, and that this is the opportunity to hear the stories from the people themselves. To me, that those two, the way in was great. Like you had me right away. And then I feel like that's the what, and then the why was all together. And then I felt like you even had room for and this is why I need your help, because I'm a filmmaker who doesn't get similar to the way you all are encouraging me to talk about myself. Why is it important to you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm always working on trying to figure out how to add that piece exactly. And, mental illness is something that touches all of us. And certainly, there are those who, very close who've been affected by it, but I need them to tell their own stories. I'm not going to be telling their stories. I need to figure out exactly how to phrase that for me. So it's something I'm working on.
I thought it was really strong, Frank, and I thought a lot of the language was really right there in terms of, again, conveying the importance of telling these stories, why you're telling them in a completely different way than any other time that they've been shared before. I know, of course, some of the challenges that you have around that, like sharing a personal connection. We've talked about that a lot, and that balancing act that you have to do there. And I think that you're actually hitting it pretty well, honestly, of really demonstrating the need there and why you're invested. I think it felt a little bit too much like a pitch. And that's just something to maybe, again, as you're working on this, think about it again. The elevator pitch is basically what it is, right? You want to be able to kind of casually introduce this at a networking event, or when you're at a fundraising event or whatever it is, right? When you're first introducing somebody to this idea, this pitch specifically should feel conversational. And I think it felt a little bit like the voiceover for a fundraising video at times. And so I think that's just going to be your own challenge, right? It's how do you translate your writer voice into something that's going to be a little bit more conversational.
Great. Great. Yep. Thank you both. Very helpful.
And I will say that like it is one of those things where it really helps to just write it out, workshop it, condense it down, write it out again, workshop it, condense it down, practice it with friends. Like there's no amount of working on it that's going to be bad, because this is going to be something that you use in your grant writing, in your individual fundraising, and your corporate sponsorships, and talking to your family foundations, like any of those times, right? Like this is going to be the core of your language whenever you're introducing your project to people.
Yeah, great.
Right. So I'm gonna keep us moving forward, and let me share my screen again. So next we're gonna talk about making the ask. And so, yeah, I'm just gonna move us through the content pretty quickly. I think y'all might have heard some of this from me before. Best way is always to ask in person. Highest success rate by far. There really is nothing better than asking in person. Zoom is fine, but let's call Zoom the next best. Like, and these days, especially, Zoom is a pretty easy way for people. Like, it's not that different from an in-person interaction for most folks these days. But of course, still, if you can get a coffee meet, if you can get a sit down, nothing beats that ever. Now that's not always possible, and so the next best thing is a phone call. Antiquated by for a lot of the younger generations, but so effective. Especially maybe because people expect phone calls less these days. So a phone call is a great way. I will say, like, there's always that hesitation I have when I'm like calling somebody who I haven't talked to in a while by phone or in that way. And we'll talk about that in a little bit in the next thing, about like how can you approach that conversationally. Text messages can work, absolutely, but they're better as part of a campaign where you're kind of asking for smaller amounts of money. So like a crowdfunding campaign, or if you're doing like an end of year campaign, it's like people you might expect to give like $25 or $50. It's fine. Text messages are a fine way to go with that. Especially if it's somebody that you might communicate with mostly via text message, right? But one of the things about text messages, it will never build relationship. Not really. Like, when can you think of a time that somebody has sent you a text message and you're like, oh, I feel so much closer to that person now? It's pretty rare. And so yeah, again, phone calls, in person, Zooms, they're always going to actually help you better relay the information, have a more personal ask, and build that relationship. And then social media messages are always your last resort. The exception being, like, there are some people who specifically use certain social media, and there are certain communities that use social media, or certain apps. So like the Latina community uses WhatsApp a lot, because that's a way for them to keep in touch with people outside of the country in an easy way. And so there are specific exemptions or exceptions to that, but in general, I think of social media and kind of those other apps as being your final means of communication, because they're the least personal. So some tips for making the ask. One thing that is really key for your own comfort, especially, but also to make sure that the other person never feels ambushed, and so that you never have a bad interaction at making an ask, it's just to let them know that that's why you're contacting them. And so if you're trying to get an in-person meeting, just be like, hey, I was wondering, do you have time to meet in the next week so I could share about my project and ask you for support or ask you for a donation? And it can, obviously frame that in whatever feels the best for you. Usually the in-person people, you're gonna have somewhat like a pretty established relationship. to begin with. But again, like be upfront that you want to talk to them about the project and ask them for support. And then that gives them the opportunity to say, hey, oh, right now, actually, I have no capacity for additional donations this year. Hit me up next year. And then it saves you both time. And again, that awkwardness of like, oh, I thought we were just getting coffee to catch up. Now you're asking me to give $1,000 to your project. Hi, wow, it's been 6 months. So again, trying to avoid that social awkwardness or unmet expectations that could happen in that kind of social interaction. By phone, that could always look like if you give them a call, like, hey, I want to catch up. I'd also love to share about the organization that I'm raising funds for. Do you have time for that right now? Or some variation on that. Sometimes I will also text people that and be like, hey, like I'd love to catch up and also, working on this project. Do you have time so I could, share a little bit about it and ask you for support? Of course, most of my friends know to expect that kind of thing from me by now. And it's never goes sour ever. Like anytime that you just again lay out that expectation, are clear about like what you're trying to accomplish, that nobody's going to fault you for trying to raise money for a good cause. So some other little tips around it: bring your one pager and any other supporting materials so that you can share them in person. It could be cute photos of programs that have already happened. It could be brochures, right? Anything that just is like, look, we're doing things, ain't it cute? People just like to see that. It builds that trust, it builds that integrity. If you're not doing it in person, they can be emailed at the end of a phone call, right? Or sent along with an email as an ask. And then also, after sharing about the project org, this is always key, make a direct ask with a specific money amount. And make that specific money amount the next level above what you think that person would give. Because we always, by default, lower that expectation in our brain, right? And I'm not saying that go up and be like, hey, auntie, can you give me $1 million for this project? If you think that person could give 500, ask them for 1,000. If you think they could give 5,000, ask them for 7,000. It's just about kind of nudging it up in your own brain. Because when you make that specific ask, you're like, hey, so can you donate $5,000 to the project? They're going to be like, oh, no, but I could donate 3,000. Or they might say, yeah, absolutely, I can donate 5,000. And if you would ask them just for 3,000 instead of 5,000, you would have only just gotten 3,000. Little bits of psychological gaming going on, right? And it's almost about psyching our own brains, because our brains are, again, they have that fear, they have that anxiety going on when it comes to asking for money. And that's going to cause us to always ask for less than we really should. Another way that this presents itself actually in a whole different venue is asking for suggested donations around things. This is why I always will do suggested donation and do maybe put it at half of the low tier is half of what you would like to get. And then the high tier is 4 times what you would like to get. And you'll always end up getting 1.5 times what you would have asked for if you just had done, anyways, if you just bump it up a little bit more, people, especially in the Bay Area, where there's a lot of affluence, are going to meet your ask. And if you're going in blind and you don't know the person, do some research. There's ways to Google, ask your friend who made the introduction, what would be an appropriate ask. You can also try to find hey, has that person ever given to another organization? Great, okay, how much did they give to that? That kind of thing. A little bit of investigation, especially when you're going in above $1,000 ask is always worthwhile. So some things about follow-up after the ask. No matter what happens, no matter what the outcome, always ask if they know anybody else they think would be interested in supporting the project or organization. Always, 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 always do this. Especially true if they said they can't afford to donate. If they can't afford to donate, they're actually even more likely to suggest some other folks who could. Because chances are, at the end of your pitch, they're going to be totally sold. They're going to want to support you. So, you know, it's almost certainly just about their financial situation, how much they've given at that point, right? If you keep on getting no's and nobody says is willing to pass on information about, you know, other people who might be interested in donating, that's when maybe go to your friends and family and start doing some pitches with them and workshopping it and seeing if there's something going on there. Again, I know that's not going to be a problem with either of you two. You know, just always, always, always ask for that additional contacts, because that's where you can start to expand your circle beyond your friends and family, and you never know who you're gonna get. A project I'm just involved with is now courting the VP of HR for PepsiCo as a donor. Right. I'm like, that's crazy. I never thought that would happen. But again, you never know who the friend of a friend is going to introduce as a potential donor. Always thank people for their time, no matter what the outcome, right? Politeness, respect, absolutely tantamount to building relationship at all times and all ways. If the person has pledged a donation, ask them what's the best way to follow up on receiving that. Because especially if you're dealing with larger donors, there might be some really specific instructions there, and ask for specific timelines. And if you have a specific timeline that you need the money for, don't be afraid to bring that up, right? If they make that, you know, if they're like, oh yes, I can donate $5,000, you know, be like, oh, fantastic. How can I follow up with you on that? Is there any way that we could receive that in the next 30 days? Because we have these big expenses coming up. And so, yeah, you know, don't ever lie, but it's okay to try to put a little bit of pressure on receiving the donation, because it's going to be an ease on your mind. It's going to help your own finances, all of that. And then always, absolutely key, send some kind of follow-up thank you note. It can be an email, absolutely. It can be a text message. I think little thank you cards are the best thing, because nobody gets mail thank you cards anymore, right? Like little personalized mail thank you cards. When was the last time either of you received one of those? Right. Exactly. Y'all are muted, so I can't hear what you're actually you can feel free to come off mute. It's only 3 of us. So.
No, I love to make my own cards, so I just sent a thank you note because I just love to make them. So.
I love that. And Maria, actually, don't ever underestimate the power of thank you cards from the kids themselves.
Oh yeah, totally. When I'm gonna do this. Kyle, I did have a quick question about like the money amount. I realize you're saying to tailor it to your audience for sure. So on the individual, like the merchants is what I'm thinking of in terms of like the bigger dollar amount. But how about when you're just working, like I'm going to be working this event and I'm going to have suggested amounts. So is there a different way I should approach like an event fundraiser versus like a one-on-one in terms of dollar amounts?
Yeah, I think that for event fundraisers, like you're talking about having different levels of suggested donation, I think that's a great way to go about it. Kind of similar to a crowdfunding campaign, right? And what we've been talking about, Frank, with having those different levels delineated and like, hey, all right, if you donate at $25, that's, you know, one kid's art supplies for a full course of workshops. And If you donate at $100, that's one art instructor's stipend for one workshop, and that kind of thing. But I think it's more of like having like a little informational, and it's a nice little suggestion for when you're at an event. I don't know if that's going to really make a huge difference, right? Versus I think for a crowdfunding campaign where people are a little bit more reading focused, right? Because the challenge you're going to have at an event is communicating all of that. Not everybody's a reader, and especially not when you're in that kind of environment. And you're not going to have the time to verbally communicate any of that. So, again, weigh whether or not it's worth doing the time for that because of that kind of communication barrier.
Couple of questions, Kyle.
Yeah.
With the following up with the thank you notes, I mean, I love the idea of sending out a little thank you note. Do you handwrite them? I ask because my handwriting is horrible. It's almost illegible. Everyone comments on it. But of course, there's no better way to personalize. So what do you recommend? And I've got another question as well.
I have the same problem. I understand. So what I will do is often I'll print the kind of core ones out. I have enough graphic design skills that I can do a little bit of like personalization, kind of make a little like personalized thank you card. And then I'll scribble little notes. And I know that like nobody can, like most people can't make them out anyways. So I keep them really short. And scribble little notes and hand sign it in my little scribble signature. So that like again, there's a little bit of personalization. And like, you don't have to do that for everybody. Honestly, just getting a little hand signed, very cute thank you note is going to be enough for most folks. I think it's your higher donors or your closer donors, the ones who are good friends or like who you're cultivating as a supporter in other ways. Those are the ones you want to go out of the way and do thank you. But also like, you can set up printed thank you notes in ways where like if you want to add in custom things, you can add it in afterwards. Also, if you're like, you can send out the card and then send up a follow-up email and be like, hey, I hope you got my thank you card. I just wanted to especially thank you for your support in this thing and how you gave us that and blah, 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 right? And so that's another way, send out the in person and then the email is kind of like a nice little follow-up. And it gives you that personalization at the same time.
Great. So you sort of answered this question, but just to check in, I mean, I actually just received first significant donation from an individual through her family foundation. And I want to write her a thank you note, a thank you letter. That is, so I mean, and I'm just thinking like, oh my God, I need letterhead. Who has letterhead anymore? I don't. Just again, like, what do you suggest? So it's a very significant donation. Somebody, it's somebody that cultivated a relationship with for a while, and we've spent a lot of time on this. And how do I acknowledge that? And with this kind of thank you, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I agree with Maria. It's like a little celebratory hat.
Yeah.
So I would lean away from formal. That's my style. I think that people appreciate informal more than formal when it comes to thank yous and connection. That a thank you on letterhead is going to feel a little bit businessy and standard, and that the way that you could go in a special way is like, is there something special about this donor that they would appreciate getting? So that could be like maybe it's a thank you note from one of the subjects, maybe of the documentary. Maybe it's a bouquet of flowers. Maybe it's some special like chocolate bars because she loves fair trade cacao. Like, is there anything special about this person where you could create a personalized experience that would make them feel really seen and their support?
Yeah, great. Okay.
And so that's where like when this relationship building, right? It's like any other friendship building or even dating, right? There's a courtship period, and then you're kind of like regularly trying to make sure that they feel like they have attention from you and care from you. And that's going to be a variety of different ways that you can possibly employ to get there. And the more you can tailor it to the person that you're trying to do, like the better the impact is going to be for that.
Yeah, great.
So I realize we're already 5 minutes past. We started late. I don't think we have time to do the final activity, which was just going to be to like role play a little bit of a pitch session, anyways, or an ask. So it's not too far off from what we did already. I'm just wondering, do you have any questions and want to finish up our time like that, or what are you all feeling?
Yeah, can we just do just a little bit of question asking and or do you want to do the role playing, Frank? With the ask?
I mean, yes, I'd love to do both. But I want to be respectful of time too. I don't know if we have enough time to just do something quick because I feel like I have so much work to do. But on the other hand, I have so much work to do. So, another 5 minutes is gonna make a big difference. No, I just need to, spend time on it. But if you have questions, Maria, ask, fire away.
Oh no, I mean, I just really love the prompts that you had for the phone calls. You have no idea how much I need a script. And that it's like really conversational. So I'm hoping to I think you're gonna send out that PowerPoint maybe to us.
I definitely will. I'll make sure that you two get it for sure.
You're
I also
the
want to share
fan.
this other resource I just put in the chat, which is again, it's from another site that you should get one free article, and it's kind of choice words to advance conversations with big donors.
Perfect.
And so it's even more like nuanced language around some of that.
Okay, perfect.
Great.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask for more language if possible.
Yeah, no, and again, it's one of those things where there's no end of the learning on that, right?
Okay.
And practicing, and I would even recommend, if you have the ability, to sit down with some friends or family who are big donors, who you want to ask for money, and if you can be like, hey, I want to ask you for this money, but I also want you to give me some honest feedback on how I'm asking.
Oh, that's
Right?
great.
Have anybody in your life where you can have that kind of candid conversation around the fundraising exchange? That could really help a lot.
Okay. I'm actually going to try to sell work. I think we talked about this because I'm an artist, and with 100% of the proceeds. And now I'm kind of rethinking that because that seems like appropriate for one aspect of fundraising, but not the other. So it seems like that's more of like the crowdfunding, the event, keep it to that. The other stuff is not. So, because I was sharing with Lisa, I'm trying to leverage all of my talents to grow this pot of money. And I'm kind of struggling to bring in my artist side. So if you had any ideas, because like I'm growing that, I'm going to use a couple of gallery shows that I'm going to be in as a possible fundraising for myself. So I'm not sure, I'm kind of getting a little, I'm stepping over myself, I think, because I have these two projects that are kind of overlapping. So if you have any suggestions how to keep that clear or when to trigger one over the other, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would say you don't need to offer or like try to sell the paintings other than outside of an event space, I would say.
Okay.
That's really more as part of like a public facing event where you have a lot of people. It acts as a point of engagement. Like remember when we talked about in our last coaching session, whenever you have that public facing event, you want points of engagement with people. So it helps initiate conversation around the project itself. And that's what selling those things can do. Yes, it will raise some funds as well, but acts as one of those channels for engagement.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that one way you could engage your art in large, like individual fundraising would be as thank yous, would be like, oh, hey, like, thank you for giving me $5,000. I'd love to just offer you your pick of my prints, like as a thank you, that kind of.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. Thank you so much.
I don't know if this is going to be of any value to you at all, but I was just thinking, well, maybe in your fundraising, you would have a show for the art that the kids do. And that can be an incentive to invite donors to the opening of that, or a pre-opening event, or, not to give you an event to do, but maybe there's something useful in it, and thinking about that. Thinking about the art
Yeah.
the kids do is, sort of an exhibition.
Yeah, part of my project is to end with a children's art exhibit. And I didn't get as far as like, what are we going to sell that work? And where does that money go to? Does it go to the children and families? Does it go to the museum? So that's some details that I need to sort, but that's definitely a great suggestion.
Yeah, and there's always ways to get creative around these things. So one thing that popped to mind, as y'all were talking about that, was that, we're talking about generic kind of computer written thank yous. You could have a bunch of computer written and like obviously printed cursive kind of thing, but then you have your kids just do like a cute little like waterprint stamp of their hand on each one that makes it completely unique and connects it right back viscerally to who's getting the impact of the donations, right? And so little with things like that. I know when I did queer rights organizing all around the country, we would send postcards that we would sign from the locations that we were doing the organizing in, right? And that was a way to like viscerally connect people back to what they were supporting.
Hey, Maria, I don't know if you're interested in this, but I would love to just be able to talk with you, maybe do some pitch practicing after this is over. And so I'm going to say to Kyle, if it's fine, if you want to offer Maria my contact information, and if she wants to respond, great. And if not, I totally understand. No problem. There's no pressure at all. But I'd love to just have another person to talk to about fundraising.
No, absolutely. You're an affiliate, right? You're an affiliate?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've actually been contacting all the affiliates. I don't know, Kyle, if you suggested that. I was just going on the page and just emailing
No,
everybody.
you were the one who came up with that,
Oh,
yeah.
really? It was me? I was
Yeah,
like, I
you
hope
were the
I'm
one
not
who came up
annoying people.
I think it's great if you can get that kind of thing going. And if y'all organize it and then want some support with like prompts around it or things like that. If there's like meta support I can provide, let me know for sure. I don't have the capacity to necessarily help organize it myself, and I don't know. It doesn't seem like IAM is having a whole lot of success getting people to these.
No, you know what, Kyle? I didn't even know it was offered. I just happened to schedule a Calendly with Lisa, and she said, "Oh, we have a new calendar." And then she showed me it, and then you were there, and I'm like, "Oh, I almost missed it." So I like immediately signed up. But like for the most part, I didn't know this was happening unless I just accidentally had that question with Lisa. So
Yeah, so maybe we can figure out a way to communicate with them. And I realize this is all being recorded. So hi, let's think about how we can help get more people to these and provide support for working groups around this.
But I love the calendar. Frank, tell me the name of your project so that I can, I'll email you right after through the affiliate page.
It's Brain Stories,
Brain
is the name of the project.
Okay, and I think your email is connected to it.
Yeah, I don't even know. I haven't done any communicating through
Oh.
the affiliate page, so I'm not sure. But
Drop it
if
in.
not, I can just have Kyle give you my contact
Okay.
information.
That sounds good. Yeah, because I can follow up with you.
That's if you don't mind passing it along, Kyle.
Or feel free to drop it in the chat while we're all here. Just because it's one less thing for me to remember I have to do.
Yeah, sure. Does the chat go out publicly is my only question.
Yeah. Let me stop recording now.